So hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now I never really got round to doing a full review on the new Canyon Aeroad, the 2021 Canyon Aeroad, but unfortunately I ended up doing a couple of videos based upon some weird design features of that bike and some problems with that bike, namely the seat post issue and the handlebar issue, which you can find on my channel. Now there was one other feature of that bike I really didn't like when it was launched and I thought it was risky, and that was the steerer tube design and how the stem clamps to the steerer tube. Obviously that's a very safety critical part of the bike, it's your steering axis. And if that goes wrong, you're on the floor. Because of the handlebar issue, they're actually riding the old handlebars and stem, integrated cockpit and stem. So they've actually gone back to the old fork, which is just a normal round steerer tube. So by getting away from the current issue of the handlebars, they're also getting away, I think, from this issue of the fork, which I still think is a massive elephant in the room. So how does this stem and steerer tube arrangement actually work? Well, at the top of the steerer tube, which is a 1 1/8 inch steerer tube, it's actually cut away to more of like a half cylinder. And then at the top of that leaf is bonded in a solid aluminium insert, which receives the clamping load from a captive thread and bolt at the back of the stem. Now that bolt clamps that leaf to the ID of the steerer tube part of the stem, which is a 1 1/8 tube, that slides over the top. And when you do the bolt up, that leaf gets clamped to the inside of the tube and the stem. Now, what do I think are the main problems with this? Well, I can think of a few. The first one is there's quite a large risk of failure of the aluminium insert, which is bonded to that inside leaf of the steerer tube. If that becomes disbonded, you lose all clamping, you lose all steering, and there's just no redundancy in that package. Now, if you think about a normal stem clamping on a round steerer tube, if one bolt was to snap, you've still got another bolt. Whereas here, if the bolt fails or the aluminium insert fails, you've lost your steering and it's quite unsafe. Now the second issue I see with this is more of a production or QC issue, is that the sliding tolerance between the outer tube and the inner tube becomes very, very critical. If those tolerances are quite loose and you've got quite a large clearance between that clamped leaf and the tube on the steerer part, you're using a lot of your bolt load just to close that gap up before you start doing any clamping anyway. So let's say you've got 600 kilos of bolt load from the M5 or M6 insert, whatever it is. You might need, say, 200 kilos of that to take up the clearance between the two parts before you start clamping. On a normal stem, there's very little clearance. It's kind of a hard push fit on some carbon steerers. As soon as you start nipping the bolts up, you're getting a lot more load directly into the steerer tube. So that's more of a QC and production issue. But I still think you're not going to have as much clamping load as you would on a normal stem, which might be bad for stiffness. And the third problem is it's just not very stiff. So assuming you have two cylinders of the same ID, OD, so that's inside diameter and outer diameter, one is cut away into a half cylinder, like I'm assuming this is, or I'm modelling this as a half cylinder, and one is a full cylinder. The half cylinder section stiffness, so the second moment of area, is about 10 times less than a full cylinder. So okay, they've probably made this leaf part at the top of the fork steerer a lot thicker, but it's never going to be as stiff as a full cylinder. It's quite a nasty thing to do because it's a QC risk doing aluminium to carbon bonding anyway. The factory's got to do it right, they've got to do the surface prep right, they've got to do the etch right, the cleaning right, everything has to be perfectly clean. So there's a few steps there. It's not easy to reliably bond aluminium to carbon and have it last ages, have it last, vibrations, repeated loading. Don't forget, every time you're loading that bolt, you're doing that full bolt load, like 600 kilos of compression into that glue line, which it will take. If there's any voids or tiny stress raises in that glue line, like micropores or bubbles, they aren't going to like that repeated bolt load. And also there's another nasty bit of design in this, is that every time you adjust the stem height, I think you're probably going to dent the back of that aluminium insert differently every time you do the bolt up. And if you put 600 kilos of bolt load through a small diameter into a pretty soft bit of aluminium, you're going to start marking that aluminium insert and denting it, and it's just really not a very nice thing to do, and it's going to get damaged over time. So thanks everyone, I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know if you've got any comments or suggestions, put them down below. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.